Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews. This host almost said nothing but static, but caught himself in the mistake. Would that have been
static as our other podcast? All episodes available on your usual podcast platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that would have? Do you think if I'd have done that, you'd have lost all respect for me? I'd have just done
an episode. I'd have just done an episode of nothing but static. I'd have been like,
oh, you're like the Will Ferrell's character in The Anchorman. Like if I just whatever I say, we're doing. So if I was just like, hello, welcome to Fringe Observers, you just start talking about Joshua Jackson.
Oh well, any excuse.
I know. Well, I saw the new Karate Kid film this week, and Joshua Jackson's in it, and I've got to say, charming as fuck as always. Delightful performance.
What role is it? Because, as far as I go, and that film, in a way, fascinates me because they sort of played it as an Avengers-style coming together, Karate Kid legends, with, as far as I could see, and I'm like, but how many? But there haven't been. It's not. It's what Cobra Kai is set in the same universe. It's the same characters. And I'm like, oh, they've taken the Jaden Smith remake that no one, as far as I can remember, no one really liked. And they're trying to claim it's legends because it's taking those characters together. So what's Joshua Jackson doing in the movie too?
Yeah, so it's very quickly, and we will get to the movie Brick in a moment. This is a weird way to start, but very quickly. So Cobra Kai, not really a thing in this movie, so don't worry about Cobra Kai. It basically,
but I'm not wrong, am I? Cobra Kai was more popular than the Karate Kid remake, right?
I would argue so, but I mean, it's hard, is it? Because obviously Jackie Chan is a draw. I bet that movie made money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's Jackie Chan, right? So I'll double check that while I'm explaining. But basically, they did a remake a few years back with Jackie Chan sort of in the Mr. Miyagi role, but because obviously Jackie Chan doesn't do karate, he does kung fu. They made him a different character called Mr. Han, and what they've very cleverly done, and I was beguiled by this choice, is they open up Karate Kid Legends with a scene from Karate Kid 2 that I had forgotten existed, where Mr. Miyagi explains that karate, kung fu, many of these art forms, different branches of the same tree, and that years before, there'd been a sharing of knowledge between these art forms, these disciplines, and they open the movie with that, and then we will live in a world where the events of both the original Karate Kid and the remake both happened, despite their similarities. And now
despite the fact that it's the same plot and the same character names and all that sort of stuff.
Well, they don't have the same character names. That's the funny thing. They all had different character names, which is, I think, what allowed them to get away with this, because the odds of there being a second Mr. Miyagi, a second Daniel San, would have been too much for this movie to get around. But because they gave them different names, they managed to just say, "Oh, we've had parallel lives." These things. History repeats itself. But yeah, that's how they've done it. It's it's not a bad movie. And Joshua Jackson is an aging boxer that needs money to pay off a loan shark because he opened a pizza business, and our new Karate Kid trains him to be lighter on his feet to help him win at a boxing match. And he's charming and very likable in the movie. He's probably one of the better performances. Actually, the main kid is great. I don't know where they found that kid. He's brilliant. I don't know what hole they dug him out from. He was just ready-made star.
I've looked it up. I know you tend to use Box Office Mojo, but for the purpose of this, Wikipedia will give us an indication. And according to Wikipedia, it was a 40 million budget, that remake, and it made 359 million. So yeah, I would say it was a success.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like it's you put Jackie Chan in a movie, and I guess Jaden Smith was of interest to people. So yeah, that movie, if that's accurate, 40 million budget, 359. I just pulled it up as well. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, no wonder they were happy to make that a part of the movie's sort of mythology, so to speak. I wonder how much Legends cost, because it's only made 100 million so far, from where we're sitting back in June, for listeners who are hearing this several weeks later. Anyway,
according to Wikipedia, 45. So you double that, and it's 90 for 90 at the moment, or 90 for 100. So.
All right, well, there you go. It's broken even. Anything from here on out is profit. That's fair. That's not bad. It's not the best, but it's not bad. All right, let's do the actual podcast, Chris. Instead of this very strange tangent, we are a podcast where we talk about old movies from our childhood that we really enjoyed. Karate Kid will come up on this at some point. I have very mixed feelings about Karate Kid because I really enjoyed that movie as a kid, but then was called Daniel-san for the next 8 years of my life. So and told to wax on, wax off quite a lot, which I didn't enjoy as a person called Daniel. So. And I never got away from it. So yeah, not my favourite, but the movie is very good. So we'll come back to that. But today we are talking about one of my favourite movies of all time that, for whatever reason, I just hadn't seen in a few years and was a little bit nervous was going to be disappointing, or like a bit sort of like too. I was worried it was going to be too smart for its own good and just feel like a try hard indie film. And maybe that's why I've not watched it in a few years. Maybe I was starting to worry that was the case and wasn't willing to go back and have my memory shattered. But we are talking about the film Brick. Shall I quickly do history? Do you want to do we do in history? Because this is your first time seeing the film, right?
Yeah. I've never seen it, but I did have a lot of artistic, creative friends that would say you got to watch Brick and go watch Brick, and that included you later at uni and stuff. So that's my sort of whistle stop history with the film.
Yeah.
And I remember that iconic blue DVD cover very well, and not really knowing what the film was about from that cover. So,
yeah, for sure. So for me, I was at college, and surrounded by a lot of very interesting creative people, and my good buddy Scott had heard about this movie Brick, and he'd said it was like, it's supposed to be like a neo-noir, but it's also got this... It's got this like dialogue. He was like, the dialogue's supposed to be amazing. The word out of like the festivals is that this film had really, really good script. And Scott and I were both very, very interested in screenwriting, even though the course we were on at the time was sort of video production and writing course. It was a bit of both, but that was the thing we were both leaning towards. We were both kind of interested in that, and we, that was an easy sell. Basically, the cinema was a 5-minute walk from our college, so there were many, many times we'd finish the day at college and then just go watch a movie. That happened a lot. So we went and saw Brick. I think it was Scott that knew it existed. I don't think I'd come across it. And it was a limited release, so it was only being shown like twice a day. So we saw the evening show and it blew us away. I then went back that week with someone different from the course to be like, look at it. Because I loved it so much. And it was a bit of an experience because I really did it. It did break my brain slightly. And then I took Nadia to see it the next week. And then... Wait, that's crazy. That was 2005. That would have been one of our early... I've just done the math on that. That we wouldn't have been together very long at all when that happened. So that was an early...
God, you can see it. You try to impress. You see, it's a film noir.
But it's set in a high school. Oh God, I would have been insufferable. But anyway, so I then took Nadia to see it, and then it was gone from the cinema. The local cinema to me was no longer showing it, and I was sad about this. And then Scott and I noticed Nadia loved it too, also, by the way, it must be said. And then we noticed that there was a small AMC cinema, which you don't get many of in the UK at all. There are only a couple, I think. Just sort of like outside of Manchester on foot. Usually when you went to Manchester, you went to the Printworks, which is the giant multiplex. But the AMC was still showing Brick. They had like one showing every other day, the third week. And we were like, well, we got to see it off. So we then went again, which means I saw this film, to my calculations, 4 times in the cinema in the space of 3 weeks. 2 the initial week, once the second week, and then a fourth final screening in the third week. So I absolutely adored this film. When it came out on DVD, literally the day it came out, I bought it. I adored it. I watched it so many times. And for years, I think everyone has this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got your favourite films, and you've got the sort of like blockbustery favourite films, like the list of if you're not talking to someone who's very into film, and they say, "What's your favourite film?" Star Wars, Back to the Future, something like that. But if you're talking to a film nerd, and you don't want to have to explain the film, because it's someone who would potentially know it. You'll be a bit more honest and be like, oh, it's Brick. Because I would never ever try and explain Brick to like my parents. What's your favorite film? It's Star Wars, Mum. Don't worry about it. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to say it's Brick and have her and have this conversation. What's that? It's an independent film from America by a director called Ryan Johnson. It's a neo-noir, but set in a high school. Oh, I've never heard of it. Yeah, I know. I don't want that conversation. So, like, yeah, for a long time, though, if I talk to people who are into films and they ask me what my favourite film was, this was the answer for a very, very long time. I went back to it dozens and dozens of times. I read the original sort of novella that Ryan Johnson sort of wrote before he wrote the screenplay. I was like very, very in on this, and Ryan Johnson's been one of my favorite directors pretty much ever since. I mean, I've seen everything he's done, Brothers Bloom through to what was the last? It was Glass Onion, wasn't it? So yeah, so I'm a huge fan of Bryan Johnson, and I think this film is. I thought it as a child, and I'm pleased to report that as an adult, I still absolutely fucking enjoyed that. Like, loved this movie. And I say child, obviously I don't watch it as a kid, but yeah, I would have been 18 when this came out, something like that, maybe a little younger, 17. So yeah, adored this film. And still had a really good time with it today. I am aware it's a little impenetrable in some ways because of the dialogue, so I am sort of aware of the fact there's a chance you're about to tell me that you hated this and found this a dull slog of a film, which is going to hurt my soul. But to be fair, sweet revenge after Mouse Hunt. So. So you can put me on my misery, Chris. How did you find your first viewing of Ryan Johnson's Brick?
I definitely didn't hate it. I did. Struggle's the wrong word. Impenetrable's a good word, but it very much stayed with me. Okay, so I didn't hate it. I didn't come away thinking, oh, that was the best film ever. My biggest takeaway was the incredible filmmaking of Ryan Johnson on display. Mm-hmm. There's the cinematography within it for what is undoubtedly a low budget is absolutely phenomenal. The idea, the central premise, the commitment to that premise,
yes.
And they really commit. I thought that was incredibly commendable. I thought that should be celebrated. I think it is you can't point to many films and go, oh, it's like this, which is also fantastic. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely didn't hate it. A lot to love about it. I think the things I struggled with were sometimes the commitment to film noir set in a high school means that if you're watching it for the first time, you know nothing going in. You're like, at first, you're a bit like, why aren't these people talking normally or responding to things normally? And you have to, with a film noir, because sometimes just in the style of it, it means that you don't get people reacting to a dead body of someone they love the way they normally would. It can be a little alienating. I think the best film noirs have this incredible central mystery where the mystery will draw you in even if the characters don't. And I'm not 100% sure personally the mystery of it was enough to make me care about the characters as much as I should right away. By the end, I cared about the lead, and was engaged with that mystery and what was happening and what was going to go down. But it took a bit of time to get there for me. Mm-hmm. And I found it personally. I thought some of scenes and dialogue were absolutely incredible, and toting that line of a film noir set in a high school was expertly done in so many moments. The chase scene was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Some of the scenes between him and the pin were phenomenal. Some of them were great, but almost made me laugh.
No,
and
you were supposed to laugh. There are funny. The several scenes in this movie are deliberately funny. The movie,
yeah, but I think
the movie's doing that thing from the Muppets, where it's playing it completely sincerely, but being like it's funny. Like the Pin's mum offering him juice while he's like while they're having that conversation, the fact that the Pin's vehicle is a people carrier for his mother, all the tugs looking like tugs, like all dressed the same as him, like the movie knows it's funny and knows that it's ridiculous, and that's kind of part of the point of the movie, I think.
And yes, but I don't know if I'm necessarily talking about. And the trouble is, it's such little moments in scenes that I can't even necessarily pull them out of my hat, which doesn't necessarily help my point, obviously. And if you can't prove it, then maybe it's not true. But I think the scenes that are meant to be funny, like the going upstairs and the mum offering a drink, that was hilarious. That was a great scene. Some scenes, the tonal shift of some of the scenes, not the ones that are deliberately funny, but just the ones where the film noir at a high school dialogue was funny and pulled me out slightly. Like, I wrestle with it because it's a really good scene, but there were moments of the first scene with the principal where I was like, oh, come on now.
So that scene was one of the other ones I was going to cite as one of the best comedy scenes in the movie, because it's that stereotypical, turning your badge and your gun. It's that, but it's like, if he's like, you're gonna... He's like, you're either gonna write me up or suspend me. It's perfect how much the tropes of a film noir fit into a high school. And I also love, he keeps referring to his boss being the Veep, which means this guy isn't even the vice principal. He's the assistant vice principal.
Yeah,
the whole thing's fucking hilarious.
And I think that's my point. Like, as a first time watcher that knew nothing about it going in, it's that dichotomy of, those scenes are hilarious, and like I say, almost feel like a spoof of the genre.
Sure.
If some scenes are hilarious and almost feel like a spoof of the genre, me investing in caring about the mystery and what is happening to the central characters becomes a bit more challenging, because you've got this dichotomy between a murdered girl and someone obsessed with finding out what happens to her, to the point where they're willing to get just brutally beaten a shitload of times.
Yes.
versus admittedly very amusing scenes, with the vice principal. And for every, vice principal scene, and not for every, but, some of the exchanges between the female lead and Josh, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, they don't feel like either funny or dramatic. Like, it's just this, the shock of that as a first time watcher. If I'm inherently questioning sometimes, what is this film? I'm inherently pulled out of the film in order to question that. But all in all, it's one of those films where I'm like, I'd still say to people, you got to watch it, and I'd still say it's enjoyable. And like I say, ridiculously commendable in terms of its ambition, its scope, what they achieved on the budget, Rian Johnson's filmmaking, the script, when I think it is like firing on all cylinders and achieving both, is a magic act. Like, the fact that it even works at all when it's funny in one scene and dramatic in another is incredibly impressive. I'll tell you one nitpick. I think it's probably bigger than a nitpick, but Nitpick Stadium. Can we go to Nitpick Stadium?
Oh, Nitpick Stadium, is that just off Nitpick Corner? Is that like nearby?
Yeah. It's still nitpicky, but it's bigger than a Nitpick Corner.
Okay.
It's Nitpick Stadium. I love the shot, right? When he first goes into the Pin's basement, and it's all blurry, and you're like, what the fuck's going on here? And then he puts on his glasses, and he can see clearly. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. That's a cool shot. That's a cool visual. And then in my head I go, but didn't we just do a thing where he opened up the thing to look at where he was? And it's like, oh, well, that's, it's fine, whatever. And then he's like, well, you don't know anything about where we are. And he reels off the house number and a perfect description of, and I'm like, hold on, I thought you couldn't fucking see. And now you're relaying all this information about where you are and a perfect description, even though 2 seconds ago, for the purpose of a nice shot, we've seen your vision is completely blurry.
Wait, did he not have his glasses on in the back of the car? I can't remember.
No, I rewound it to check. He doesn't have his glasses on in the back of the car.
No, I'd say that's nitpick corner. That's it's because he's not just that his glasses are blurry. He's also been like beaten and dragged through the mud. Like his vision's, I assume his vision is coming and going. But yeah, you're right. It's a cool shot. It is a cool shot when it's really blurry and he puts the glasses on the pin.
Yeah, it's a great shot. It's a great shot. But don't 2 seconds later have dialogue where he's smug because he's had perfect fucking memory of his surroundings from the trunk of a car with blurry eyes.
Fair enough. That is fair enough. I think. I mean, look. I could agree with you on a lot of this, Chris, but then we'd both be wrong, and I don't want to do that. So, just to cover some of your points, I do disagree pretty strongly on your stuff about the tonal stuff. Look, your experience is your experience. It took you out of the movie. But I actually think what's genius about this film is the sincerity in which they play it, including the jokes. And I think. Because I think it's one of those things where this premise is inherently absurd. The world they live in this movie is deliberately heightened. It is this dense, sincere impression of youth and high school. And it's almost sort of making that comparison to how when you're in high school, every little interaction feels like life and death. Like every relationship, every bit of drama feels like the beginning, the be all and end all of everything that you know, because it is. You're a high schooler. All you know is your school day, right? And you know what I mean? Like that is your life when you're at school. It's not like you're an adult enough to just go out and about. Like especially when you're first in high school, you're not young enough. So you're when you're home, you're with your parents. When you're in high school, that's when you're with other people, and that's when you feel like you start to have this life of your own. The importance you put on every tiny interaction makes everything feel like life and death. And in this movie, it literally is. But I think that's the point. It's like it is deliberately absurd what they're doing here, and I think the reason it works so well is that the movie never winks at its absurdity. It deliberately leans into it, just like, because that moment you just described is super dramatic, right? He drags him down to the pin. We're meeting the pin for the first time. He puts the glasses on. The pin comes into vision, and then he awkwardly has to like roll his chair around in a way that is very uncool and very unbecoming. Which immediately diffuses that, and I believe that's a deliberate choice. I think even the dense dialogue, which I think could put a lot of people off, is brilliant because what it does is it forces you to lean in. This is a movie with a lot of moving parts at any one time, and it knows that for the tension of the last act to work, you need to be invested. And what I think it does so brilliantly, and what I really noticed on this particular viewing, was because the dialogue is so dense, you find yourself, it's like that old thing about, you're in a meeting, sort of slightly whisper, because it forces the person to really concentrate on what you're saying, to hear it. And the movie sort of does the dialogue version of that, where the dialogue is slightly, it's English, but it is often things are phrased in an awkward way that you've got to think for just that extra second to understand what it is they're saying, because they're not phrasing it.
It has that, it's, I found it like, and this is akin to the experience of engaging with it. Not, God, that sounded pretentious. I clearly just recently watched Brick, but it like it was like the experience of watching Shakespeare, like having to all the words making sense, but the order in which they've been put in means you have to really concentrate to understand the meaning, and often sometimes the meaning comes from the dual meaning of the words and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's sort of, and I think Nadia made a similar point. I think she also sort of compared it to like Shakespeare or something of that kin, like where that ilk, where it's like you do have to concentrate just that little bit harder to take everything in, but that's deliberate also, because I think in a world where the dialogue of this movie is a bit more naturalistic, you probably aren't as invested by the end, but you're leaning in, you're listening, you're taking in every detail, you're pulling together all of the pieces, and as a result, you sort of like, the movie builds a trust with you as well, because it's also not afraid to just leave you in the dark about stuff all of the time. You're constantly guessing what these characters are thinking and doing. Like that moment, again, just to take the scene that we've already described, when he reels off the pin's location, You're like, to what end, Brendan? Like, what are you doing that for? That's going to just get you beat up. But as the movie progresses, you understand. And I think what's really interesting, I saw a video. I was trying to I finished this movie and just immediately wanted to intellectualize it. And there's not enough video essays on Brick, by the way, just in general, like just studying the movie and talking about the movie. Get on it, internet. But I did find one really short one that sort of was talking about how a murder mystery is sort of cause and effect, but reversed, where like you see the effect of the choices everyone has made, and then you're discovering the cause. And this movie does that on the larger scale, in that we have a character who has died, and we're now exploring the why. Why did that person die? Then we have micro versions of it throughout the movie, where like a small thing happens and you don't understand why, and the movie will explain it to you either sometimes minutes later, sometimes seconds later. Sometimes it's a simple visual thing. Like she's in the car, it starts to tip slightly. That's the effect. Why? Pull back, because Brendan just sat on it. He's there now. He's interjected into this scene. And like the movie is cause effect the wrong way round. Like all the way through, and it again, that does make it impenetrable in some ways. Along with the dialogue, you're often left wondering what characters are thinking, what characters are doing, and when it all comes together in the end, I cannot tell you how satisfying this was, especially on a rewatch, because obviously I remembered the big plot beats. I remembered the film. Actually, I remembered a lot more of the film than I thought I did. I remembered it almost intimately. Nadia, on the other hand, had a much vaguer memory of it and didn't 100% know where it was going. But I was waiting for that end reveal all movie, and seeing the pieces slot into place, and was just like, this is genius. We outright say, and I guess we'll do spoilers from here. Look, I'm recommending the movie. Obviously, I love this movie. We'll go full spoilers from here. The final reveal of who is responsible is so clever for a number of reasons. One, really early in the movie, Brendan tags that character as a player. That's how he describes her. He says, Brad's a sap and you're with Brad, which means you're playing him. So you're a player and I can't trust you. Now, slowly and surely, she chips away at that trust until he realizes the truth, which is she is exactly what he first observed, but his judgment got clouded. And the genius of the way these things come together, because also one of the first things he says is he doesn't say, I want to know who killed them. He says, I want to know who put her in that position. He says that really early in the movie. So he's not even necessarily looking for a killer. He understands in this world, the killer might just have been a trigger, might just have been he wants to know who dragged her into the shit she was in, because he loves her so much, he can't believe she got herself into it without someone else, giving a little nudge. And the final reveal to me is so clever, and the way that all of the plots put together, when you combine that with the dialogue that sort of draws you in and does this whole cause and effect thing, you want to talk about a magic trick. Like the fact that this movie works as well as it does, with that many moving parts, that much information, that much intrigue, where you don't understand the motives of a character until you do, and then it's like, oh, and suddenly you're retroactively thinking back to the whole movie. You're constantly doing that in this movie. You're constantly reassessing things you've already seen, and that again is all sorts of genius. And it works really well on a rewatch. There's a reason I watched this movie 4 times in a space of 3 weeks. Originally, its dense nature means that when you rewatch it, you will pick up more, and when you watch it knowing where it's going, it's even more satisfying. So yeah, I if it has not become clear, I still, it turns out, absolutely adore this movie. It's still one of my favorite movies of all time. I think everything from the music, the atmosphere, the comedy, the choices, the sincerity in which they play it is all, the lack of winking at the audience. It's effortlessly funny. It's a deeply absurd world played completely sincere, and a really complex plot pulled together in a way that is deeply satisfying. And then tension. Oh my god, tension! The scene where everyone's at the water, the drain pipe, and we think Brendan's about to be sort of accused. Oh my god, the tension of that scene, and the choice to swing the camera over so Tug is framed behind Brendan, so we sort of forget Tug exists before he enters the scene in a really, really violent way. My god, what's this? This Brian Johnson kid was working on a different level, and he was what was he 6 when he made this movie? So
yeah, it's insane. I mean, and I almost like, I know we don't usually do this, but I almost think for the purpose of discussion, because one of the most impressive feats is, how early in his career it was, budget. So I'm stepping on Triv a little bit. I assume I'm right, low budget. I assume he must have raised the money himself almost to make this movie. Can you frame a little bit of the context of that? Because it genuinely is just one of the most impressive things about this movie. Like, the filmmaking on display is absolutely incredible. And I think the best way to sort of make that point is to have that context of just what his constraints were.
So he wrote it in 1997. And he then spent 6 years trying to get the production rolling. So in one interview, he explained why it took so long. And he said, first of all, the script... actually, this was in an interview... this is in a brilliant interview with The Telegraph, that was titled Drugsy Malone, which is... I've just got to say... Thank you, Telegraph. He basically said, first of all, the script was so weird that it was a challenge finding people who got what it was going for, and even the people who did get it could see very clearly that if it was mishandled even slightly, it would have been an absolute train wreck. It could have been kids doing bad Humphrey Bogart impressions. Couple that with the fact that I'm a first-time director and I'm very bad at doing the Hollywood shuffle, it ended up taking a while. So what happened in the end, he got it independently financed, and again, he told The Telegraph the same thing. My family, who are in... the building business, had an influx of money and were in a position to invest, not the entire amount, but at least some money. And then once you get a chunk, other people are more willing to come aboard. The final budget for the film was $450,000, so just under $500,000, and production began in 2003. So yeah,
that's mad.
He made, I mean, and 450,000 sounds like an extraordinary amount of money, but not enough money to make a movie, maybe in a modern context. Even in 2003, that wasn't very much money for making a movie.
I think he's absolutely right as well about the tightrope the movie has to walk. Like, I've never seen The Room, but I assume, handled wrong, this movie's The Room, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be that would have to be handled extraordinarily wrong to quite be The Room. But I see what you're saying. You're right. It's a cheesy mess of an amateur kids production, like where like young people went and put a movie together, and it's just like they find it funny and entertaining, but it's like absolutely unwatchable to anyone else.
Yeah, because I think the worst version of this movie is it's not pulled off, and therefore it's so bad it's funny. Mm-hmm. Which would be horrendous. And as much as I'm, not bouncing, I'm not rushing out to see it again like you were the first time you saw it. I absolutely don't think it's bad and funny. I agree with all the compliments you've given it. Like it's completely personal reaction. I think, like I say, I think the filmmaking on display here, especially when you find out he did it for $450,000, is absolutely crazy. But Joseph Gordon-Levitt must have been, because this has got to be after Third Rock, right?
Right. Yeah, but he is a bit known. He's a bit known. He's obviously done a big sitcom, but that obviously doesn't land you dramatic roles in movies. He had just done a film called Manic in 2001, which Ryan Johnson had seen him in, and he had been good in that movie, but that movie wasn't like a huge hit or anything. It hadn't propelled Joseph Gordon-Levitt to like stardom. But Ryan Johnson saw pretty quickly when he watched that movie and arranged for a meeting. And I'm willing to bet every actor in this movie got paid peanuts to do it. But I've got to say, it wouldn't surprise me to discover this cast basically came together because they read the script. Like it's a pretty compelling, because obviously Emily DeRevin as well, who had not done Lost at this point. I'm assuming. What year is this? No, she had done Lost, hadn't she? When does Lost start?
Lost is early 2000s. Lost is 2004.
Oh, so when she films this, she has not done Lost yet. Interesting. When it comes out, Lost is already happening, and she feels like a big star. That's also interesting. And of course, Nora Zetner I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry if I'm not, Nora. But, I'm sure you. I know you're a big listener. No, I'm sorry that I got pronounced your name horribly. She obviously ended up in Heroes, and that was a big deal. So a lot of this cast did go on to do good stuff. Lucas Haas as well, Megan Good. Have all done cool stuff. So yeah, they must have just. It must be the script, right? Like I don't know how else you're getting this cast together because they're all so damn good. Very compelling performances throughout. Yeah, it's interesting. So I mean, in terms of like your reaction to it, sort of the with the sort of sometimes finding that you were taken out of the drama of it. Did that, do you think, detract then from the sort of tension of the last act for you? Then did that follow through, or did the last act still sort of like once we're at the scene at the drainage pipe and like the stuff in the pit's basement, later in the movie, was that stuff negatively affected by the being pulled out of the movie in the earlier parts?
No, that all still worked because it's an hour and 40-minute movie, so by then. I'm more like, one, I think it's doing less of the stuff that was pulling me out. We've talked about the comedic scenes. Perhaps maybe that's it. I can't say for sure what it is. Like I say, it's one of the reasons the movie stuck with me. But it's the movie's doing less of that. You've just watched an hour and 10 or whatever it is of the movie, so you know what it is. And it all comes together so well, as you've said, in such a satisfying way. That by the time the last scene rolls around, fully in and fully hooked on it. So no, it definitely didn't do that. All of that stuff still worked for me. And like you say, I think it's because they intertwine it so beautifully throughout the movie. It's clear. Sorry. It's clear. I was up very late watching Brick. It's clear that it's about. It's not about who literally killed her. It's about why she got killed and why she was put in that situation and the way all of that's unfolding towards the end. And like the brutality of the, we're in full spoilers now, but as Dan's already said, but the brutality of she didn't love the father. Like, oh God, that hits you. That did hit me. Like, I did. Yeah. I absolutely felt for old Joseph Gordon in that moment. Like, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that stuff came later because I also reread the novella yesterday, and today there were a little bit this morning. I finished the last few pages. That's the pregnancy stuff's not in that, and I'm glad that change came. I think because that gives everyone more motivation. I think. Because in the novella, which is the earliest version of this story, he wrote it sort of as a novella and adapted it just to make sure it had that dense dialogue, that film noir feel in the way the characters speak. He sort of wrote it that way first. That plot point being missing is hurts it a little, I think, on the page. It was a smart thing for him to add that element. I think that gives everyone a lot more motivation. Just works a little bit better. Did you? Because when I first watched it, was sort of not put off. I was like surprised by the lack of film noir visual tropes because we're doing a lot of film noir storytelling tropes. There's a femme fatale who wears red. There's the victim who is a sweet girl gone wrong. There's our hard-boiled detective who is getting his ass kicked a lot, which feels very film noir.
There's a sidekick.
He's got a little sidekick that gives him information. His little informant.
Going. Let's be honest, above and beyond.
Yeah. It's funny because when you rewatch the movie, there's a point when he looks at him and he's like, "Are you in?" Like this is going to get worse before it gets better. Are you in? And once you've seen the movie, that scene plays out slightly differently, I find, because you realize that Brain's smart enough to know what he means, and therefore he really is when he agrees to do this, like potentially putting himself in the line of fire. So that's fun. You have all those. So you have all these genuine film noir sort of elements. But interestingly, we don't do the hats, we don't do all the shadowy imagery. We do some bits of that, but not really. It's got a really distinct look of its own. It doesn't have I'm not sure it has. I think it was smart but also a very interesting choice to not choose to do much of the film noir visuals. But did you notice that? Because the first time I watched it, I remember being surprised and almost like slightly disappointed we didn't lean into that. But I'm wondering now if that would have been a step too far to like give them like hats and like, you know.
Yeah, I think the issue that I think is slightly there, it would have been tenfold if they'd have done that. And to be honest with you, they still do. To someone that I could. Oops, sorry, ripped at the mic. Then apologies. There was a lot of noise.
Is it still recording? That's the thing. That's the thing to check.
What? Oh yeah, it's still running. Yeah. I've got batteries in it anyway, even if the wire fell out. He says cockily to months later be like, yeah, we got no recording, the batteries died. It's not like they're not doing shit with the camera. You know, you described one of the shots. Like, yes. as someone that knows some of the tropes of film noir, but isn't necessarily a massive film buff on it, then actually, you know, things like the sweeping shot for me of, you know, the car goes down and then it sweeps to reveal him. Things like him being revealed at the party. Like I say, the chase sequence is brilliant, and the way you really, because they do a shitload of film noir stuff with the audio in this movie, from the music choices, the music. And in that running scene, the emphasis on the footsteps, on the pop of the feet, felt very film noir to me. So I think as someone that's not looking, like, I wouldn't name, if someone said describe film noir, I wouldn't personally know enough to talk about the hats. So as someone with that broad knowledge of it as a genre, I kind of think they did do enough. Yeah, you know, it's nobody could say it wasn't fucking clear. I think you could, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't even have to know what a film noir was, and you'd watch this film and go, oh, it's a film noir set at a high school. Like, yeah, right. They make that very clear, and it can't all be with dialogue and music. Like, there has to be cinematography within that as well. I just think by the sounds of it, they've avoided the tropes that could make it feel like a spoof.
Right, well, that's exactly what I was just about to say, I think, because I think you're right, because I think what they've really avoided mostly is, like, some of the, like, the very, like, overtly iconic, like, when you think of film noir, you think of detectives in smoky rooms, lit mostly in shadow, you know, silhouetted very often, you know, silhouetted through glass. Like, we didn't do, like, when he went to the assistant vice principal's office, we didn't do the shot where we were from the outside, where we could see, you know, assistant vice principal written on the glass, but the glass is sort of frosted, and then like a shadow goes over it. You know, that sort of imagery. You know, that which would have been maybe too over. And because the movie's, again, though, I think actually that leans into what I said about the way that the movie treats its noir elements, which is complete sincerity. And I feel like maybe if we had done that, that would have felt too much like the movie winking and being in on the joke. Whereas actually, presenting it as naturalistically as possible is actually part of why this movie's so good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So with the dialogue, I've got to ask, because I don't 100% remember my exact first time watching this. Did you struggle at first with the dialogue because of the density of it? Like, did you have to like switch on the subtitles or like do anything extra, or would you just like be like, oh no, I have to really fucking listen to this?
I'll be honest. My honest answer to that question is going to annoy you, Dan. I struggled. No, I didn't struggle to follow it. I struggled in that at first it just irritated me. Right. At first, I was just like, "Oh fucking hell, this movie's up its arse." Like I say, I fully came around from that. I think it's funny how in my. I really like, and I think it's just a passionate thing, and I think, you know, most fans of this movie would agree with you anyway. But I really like, you know, at the beginning of this podcast, you're like, I can understand why it's inaccessible. I can't remember what the word you used was. Unattainable,
impenetrable.
You're like, I can understand why it's impenetrable for some. So what did you think, Chris? And I said nothing anywhere near as negative as that. And then you're like, well, I agree. I disagree. And in my head, I went, I wonder what it'd have done if I'd have said it was impenetrable. But so yeah, I hate to hurt your soul. Like, that's the phrase you used. But at first, I was just a bit irritated by it, but because I was just like, oh, come on. Because again, you got to remember, under your instructions, I didn't go in knowing it was a film noir set in a high school. Ryan Johnson's movie, a lot of cinema people love it. It's all I knew. And that was, the instruction last week was,
yes,
don't watch a trailer, don't do anything, just put it on. So yeah, when I first put it on, I'm like, oh, fucking hell.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Glad I didn't. God.
Because I was going to say, because like in terms of if you'd have said it was about, I mean, I genuinely mean that. Here's the thing, I don't find it that way at all. But I, as I said, I understand if someone would. When I put it on yesterday or whatever day I watched it 2 days ago, like I made sure I had the subtitles on because I was like, I remember this film is dense and I don't want to miss the detail, especially if we're going to review it. I don't want to miss a detail of the mystery or anything like that. And I know that the dialogue is like comes at you thick and fast, and there's a lot of information phrased in unusual ways, so I was like ready for it. But
so how worried were you then? Because I was thinking back, and we've done Donnie Darko and Memento, which I would put that in a film I'm about to name in this category of when we were younger and getting into film, the big cinema fans talked about the art of these movies.
Yeah.
And we watched Donnie Darko and we watched Memento and we went, nope, still hold up, still brilliant. You didn't feel that way as such about Good Will Hunting. We watched Good Will Hunting and you were a bit, this film is actually overrated in my opinion. How worried were you because of things like the dialogue as we're talking about here? How worried were you about watching this film and going, oh shit, it's not a masterpiece?
Pretty worried. I think that's potentially the reason it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, because I was thinking about it. I was like, I watch this movie like at least once a year for a long time. Like I watch this movie really regularly. Like it would maybe not like clockwork once a year, but you know what I mean? Like roughly, like it would be, I don't think sort of year and a half would pass where I wouldn't sort of throw this on at some point for funsies. And at a certain point, I put it aside, didn't watch it for a couple of years, and then I guess I just got a bit nervous that I was going to watch it and it was going to suck. And like, even when we started this podcast, Brick's been at the back of my mind for this podcast as a choice for a long time. And this is the ultimate example of like a film I adored and put a lot of like stock into, and knowing you hadn't seen it, or being fairly sure you hadn't seen it, being like, this could all come crashing. I could rewatch it and it could be absolute shite. And that's going to be a problem. And then, so we put it on. I watched it with Nadia 2 days ago. She literally was like, the first 5-10 minutes, she was a little unsure and was like, and then like the movie pulled her in. The movie won basically. And I do think that is a rite of passage with watching Brick the first time. I think there's an element of like, because I think even my first viewing, especially for that first sort of half an hour, I wasn't really sure what I was watching or whether I was into it. And the movie sort of wins you over, I think, to its, I think it's a bit like, I've had this experience with music previously where there's been certain bands where I've had their album and I've been like disappointed with the album at first. And then I've listened to it a few times and gone, the album needed to teach me how to enjoy it, if that makes sense. Like I needed to learn how to enjoy this because I was approaching it wrong. I was in a different headspace about what this is. So I feel like with Brick, I suspect everyone's had a similar experience when they first start watching it in that first 10, 15 minutes, especially like maybe half an hour. But I suspect it's probably less than that. But when he's just initially walking around questioning everyone and you're not that invested in the people yet, and we haven't even gotten to the murder because we do that whole 2 days earlier thing, and you're just sort of like, I don't really know where this is going, or if I'm engaged in this. And then like sort of you get more and more interested the more you go, and it pulls you in. I didn't have that experience this time because as soon as the movie starts, I'm like hearing that dialogue again. I'm like, oh, that rhythm. I know that rhythm. I'm like already bopping my head. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh, this feels familiar. This feels good. I'm interested. And so it won me over really quickly this time around, like pretty much immediately. Whereas Nadia, though, who had not seen it as recently as I, because she didn't do semi-yearly rewatches, she probably hadn't seen it since, a year or two after the original release at best. she had that experience where she told me when we finished it, she turned to me and she literally said, yeah, the first like 15-20 minutes I was kind of worried it sucked. And then like I got one round. So I do think I knew I was taking a risk not giving you any kind of primer on what this movie was. And I knew that would potentially affect your impression of the movie, and I knew that would potentially, sort of be sending you in blind. But I was like, well, that's how I saw it. It's how it should be seen. It's how people should see the movie. I mean, if you've listened this far and you've never seen the movie at this point, you already know now, I guess. But it's still obviously worth seeing. But yeah, I kind of knew that we were playing that game. But I was really nervous, to answer your question in a very long-rounded way. I was completely 50-50 on whether it was just going to be pretentious shite that young me thought was really clever and artful, and adult me was going to look at and go, what a big pile of wank. And I think there is a certain amount of pretentiousness in here. Like, there just is. But I don't necessarily mean that as a criticism, because I think as a genre, you could argue, film noir can be pretentious, and when you add a high school setting, like, it just inherently, something that, a highbrow concept in a lowbrow setting, arguably, not that, or a setting you wouldn't usually expect to find it. That inherently feels a little pretentious, but I don't think it causes you to dislike the movie. But I guess it also depends on where your tolerance and where your level is for stuff like that. The Shakespeare style reaction to the dialogue would be enough for some to make them go, nah, this is too pretentious for me, I'm out. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think as well, like, it's also tricky because film noir doesn't really have traditional story structure either, or even like character arcs. There are arcs here, but it's more about uncovering the truth than it is about the people growing and learning, and that's baked into a movie like this, and that can make it also a little bit hard to sort of get into. Because
I say, he doesn't, and this for some people, for me, it was a line of like, I'm not sure, and again, more won over by the end. But for some, it would be the central premise is he's desperate to find out what's happened, but his fundamental reaction initially, we have scenes later on of him grieving, to, he does because it's a film noir, he doesn't react normally to seeing his ex-girlfriend dead.
So I thought about that a lot, because I had a similar oh no, go finish your thought and I'll jump in. Sorry.
Well, I was saying, for some people, again, it depends where people's line is. For some people, that'll be a clear, nah, I'm out because he's not. Do you know what I mean? I'm not getting what I would expect to get from the characters. And again, I think the scene later of him picturing her when he's in bed, shaking and grieving, is phenomenal. Like, I think it's a really, really strong scene. So you do sort of get that later. But initially, for some people, that would be a line in the sand, I think.
Right, I think what's kind of, again, comes back to this sort of cause and effect thing, isn't it? This movie's way of doing things almost backwards. You watch him sort of staring through the body, essentially, and it reads as shock, but it doesn't read as grief. And at first, you're like, this guy's kind of robotic almost. Like, can I relate to a character that can be sort of like so unemotional about something? But then you watch the rest of the movie, and what the movie teaches you about Brendan, and it's not so much that he's on an arc, more that you're learning about him, is that basically he's the kind of person that this horrible thing has happened, but he now knows what he has to do. Rewatching that scene in the cold, hard light of day is him realizing he might be about to have to throw his entire life away. Essentially out of revenge, out of like needing the truth, out of wanting to put the people who put her in harm's way to rights. And there's such like a moral obligation that Brendan has to setting the world alight, to set it right. And when you look at that scene, knowing that that's where it goes for him, that he's willing to get his ass kicked time and time again, put himself through the ringer, take these huge risks, because he knows he's got to basically throw everything at this and quickly, or everyone's going to ground and there'll never be justice. It's when you watch it again, knowing that, you're like, he's pushing all that down because he knows the work begins now. Like, it reads so differently once you've seen the rest of the movie, that scene. And that's what I really love about this movie, is how retroactively everything gets reframed constantly. The more you learn about what's going on, there's a portion of the movie when you believe Emily was the one who cut the brick, made the brick bad, and you start thinking like, man, is this a person worth doing this for? This is sketchy shit she did. She kind of like did this to herself to some degree. Then you find out that she didn't at all do that. But like and then you're reframing again every time. The movie, as more information comes to you, reframes every character. Your initial impression of Tug versus your impression of Tug by the end of the movie is completely different, and it makes you reconsider everything that came before it. Your relationship, your understanding of the pin changes by the end of the movie when he's screaming in that sort of like almost childish voice, like Brendan, he wants that help, and it's like, where he's been so cool and calm and collected and intimidating the rest of the time. Once you see that facade go away, you realize that this is just another child mixed up in all this, and like it reframes everything that you saw before it, and the movie's constantly doing that, and that's one of the things that makes it impenetrable. I agree, and makes it difficult for an audience, because you're right, he does seem cold and weird in that scene. It makes perfect sense once you've seen the rest of the movie, though. And I can't tell you how much that is one of the reasons this movie was such an easy rewatch for me back in the day, was because I was always getting that out of it, rewatching it, seeing the truth, or understanding the truth, and then watching the movie from the beginning is a completely different experience to watching the movie, if that makes sense. Especially for the first time.
I think there's so many different levels for so many different people that it really shows that I don't mean this as an insult or a criticism. I mean it sincerely. The fact that this movie isn't debated, the fact that, because I know this movie isn't debated. I know this movie is beloved by its fans, and is considered a cult classic. I think that fact shows how disappointingly few people have seen this movie.
I agree.
Because I think if more people had seen it, it would be more debated. The fact that it isn't is a reflection of how there is a mainstream audience out there that just hasn't seen it.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't give it a chance. Like, let's be honest.
And it's one of the reasons I started from not a negative place, but just a not as positive place, because I was like, well, I think this film should be a discussion, and I suspect what I will find, because I will look at like some video essays and stuff. I expect what I will find is it's not a discussion; it's just video essays of people that love the movie, and that's absolutely valid and fair. But I like the idea of this at least being a bit of a discussion and a dissection, because of that. Yeah, almost deliberate slant on it, because I just feel like there would be more. I just don't get it if it was seen by more people, and I think it should be seen by more people, because I think there would also be inherently more. Oh no, it's a masterpiece and it's amazing. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's sort of like it's this weird thing where the movie found its audience specifically, like really found its audience, like laser guided missile. Like the people who this movie would appreciate this movie, it found them. Like, and I don't know how. There are plenty of examples of really great movies that are only really for a niche audience, slipping into the mainstream and then having very divisive discussions around them, I mean, Ryan Johnson's responsible for another one. He The Last Jedi is, a really interesting take on a Star Wars movie that I deeply love and is one of my favorite Star Wars movies, but it was very divisive amongst casual audiences, and that is super interesting. Something like Knives Out, which has been a huge success, but has been a success with the audience that like that sort of thing. People who don't just haven't watched it, and that's fine. Like, it's really interesting. Ryan Johnson's just very good at doing the thing that he does, and if you're not into that thing, then you're probably not going to be a big fan of his work. But you've probably never seen it. Like, that's the issue.
Just remembering in The Last Jedi, like how for me the there's that bit where you think it's a massive spaceship and it turns out to be an iron. Like, it's just ironing some clothes. Like, I remember that really, really annoying a friend of mine who's a big Star Wars guy. It was like, you don't put jokes in Star Wars. Like, I was a bit like, have you seen The Phantom Menace?
Yeah.
There's a lot of jokes in there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you see the original trilogy, there's jokes in there too. It's full of them. Fundamentally, this movie's quite complex in its mystery. Did you find that the it all came together in a way that made sense to you in the end? Like, because one thing I will say is the one thing that could get lost for a viewer with the dialogue being so dense is information occasionally getting lost, details getting lost. It's designed for you to feel confused as the movie goes on if you're watching it for the first time, because as I said, things happen that don't make sense until the movie contextualizes them later. That's just constantly happening in this movie. So no one watches this movie not confused. But I guess the real judge of whether it works in the end is, by the end of the movie, did you feel like you fully understood the events that had occurred? Like, it had all come together in a way that you were satisfied with, or were there gaps in your understanding?
Oh, incredibly satisfying, incredibly clear. The only thing I had to rewind to try and catch was the pin's outcome. Like, I got that Tug had died, but I didn't. I had to rewind and listen. And I think the notion is that the pin died as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. So I had
beaten to death by Tug, I believe, and then Tug went out shooting at the police.
Yeah. And then, he says, like, you sent them there to burn, and he names Tug the pin, and the guy I think came in at the beginning of that scene. So yes, that was the only element. Everything else, very clear. There was she took a brick, she split it in half, she framed Emily for it. Like, all of that stuff was very satisfying and very clear.
So, how did you feel then about the sort of romantic element of this movie? There's two strands to pull on that. Well, three really, but we won't talk. Like Dode and Tug's relationship with Emily is deliberately messy, I think, and never really clarified exactly who she loved, who she didn't, where she stood, in terms of, but that's kind of on purpose, I think. But the two sort of romantic stories that were sort of the movie deliberately gives us information about and invests in is, of course, Brendan's with Emily and how that ended, which is him trying to hold on tight and protect her, and that's tragic because obviously he was technically right in that her choices did lead to her undoing, but also it wasn't his place to control her choices. So there's like a bit of not muddled, but like it was an interesting dynamic they developed with that. But of course, then Laura's character, our femme fatale, sort of like the puller of strings, has this relationship that you never quite know, even at the end, how much of it was real and how much of it was part of her game plan, because she does try to tell Brendan not to go to the meeting. And while she does let him go in the end, she does try to talk him out of it at the beginning, and and we know later on that she knew that was turning into a bloodbath. She designed it that way. So how did you feel about both those relationships and how much you bought into them?
Yeah, I think, and even at the end with her, so in terms of the femme fatale relationship, I really liked that, and because the way it's played, it's not played like he's categorically falling in love with her and is smitten. Like, he's always, even when they kiss, like he's grieving and in serious physical harm.
Yes.
And she rolls him over and kisses him, and yes, he kisses her back, but like you could absolutely make a read of that, of him being put in that position. I really liked as well, even when she gets vindictive in the end and says about Emily and the baby, the delivery of it for a performance which has to be a little chew the scenery in places. Like, I think that actress has a really difficult job with that role, because it has to chew the scenery in some scenes. But in that scene, like, it's such a raw, wonderful performance where she's being vindictive, but she's just sad about it, and it just comes across like she genuinely does have feelings for him. Like she's more annoyed that he's done this to her than she is that she hasn't got away with it. It's not, and I would have got away with it too were it not for those pesky interfering kids. It's more, oh, don't do this. Like, this is a shame. And I really liked that. I thought the performance of both actors in that final scene in particular, which is sort of where, whilst the dialogue is still it's sort of where the film noir theme slips a little, maybe, in the performances at least. But I think that's a very deliberate, very, very strong choice from the actors and presumably Rian Johnson. And Brendan and Emily is harder at the beginning because, again, he's the read makes sense. And now if I rewatched it back, I would probably read it as you have, of he's looking through her with determination. But I think first time watching it, that jarred with me a bit. I like this flashback where, he's trying to help her and it almost seems...
I can't not laugh when I think of that flashback, his goofy little hair before it gets all... He's all like primly... It's dumb. Look, I've seen some bad haircuts in my day in movies. That's the worst haircut in a movie ever.
You've seen some bad haircuts in the mirror, my friend.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And even I'm like, oh, jeez. Oh, dear Lord, Brendan, what were you thinking, man? His hair in that flashback scene is dreadful. Like, really awful. Is it as bad as Hawkeye with the mohawk in the Avengers movies? Because that is probably one of the worst haircuts I've ever seen in a movie also.
Yeah,
it's on that level.
Is. Well, I think both are trying to tell you something about the character in defense of the haircuts.
Yeah.
both are deliberate.
It's a choice. It's a real choice.
So yeah, I thought, but yeah, both love stories. Because in the end, the film, and this is, like I say, where I wound up in the end. It's about the what and the why more than it is the characters to some degree. So yeah, I thought both of those relationships and questions worked for me for sure.
Yeah, I thought the same. I was interested to get your thoughts on it because obviously I joke very often you're sort of our resident love expert in that you are very passionate about love stories in TV shows and movies, and you wrote a whole script on the notion back when we were at uni, like on the subject of like examining not just love stories but rom-coms, and so I always a script which could be used as a very good argument for why I have no right to analyze movies in any way, shape, or form. I remember it being I remember it being a good script, but that's just me.
God, so bad.
I did recently.
The climax of it was him getting on stage at a pop concert and yelling the words to "Killing in the Name" by Rage Against the Machine.
Sounds good to me. I wrote at the same time you were writing that script. I wrote a science fiction script that's pretty dreadful, if you remember.
No, I remember enjoying that one.
Yeah, this is the thing. But I had a look back at it recently, and it's not good. It's not good at all.
No, I can't. I opened. It was called Like the Movies. Such a bad title as well. I briefly, I think a good 10, 12 years ago now, I opened up a page of Like the Movies. And not only was I cringing at the quality, but it was also that I spotted two fucking belter of spelling and grammar mistakes on that one page alone, and I was like, oh god, how did I even get a degree? And I just closed it and haven't looked back since.
Mine was a mess for that as well, and I was like, this is the so I pulled it up because there was a line of dialogue I was trying to remember. I was like, I'm sure I wrote a really goofy line of dialogue, so I dug it out and was like, not in my Dropbox, not like a physical copy. I was trying to find that line of dialogue, but the more I read, the more I was just like, I don't even know if this line is worth finding. This is a bad script. It's a bad script written by an idiot. I would not make any of these choices.
I don't know how we got away with the spelling and literally errors where I'm like, surely I should have potentially failed on this alone.
Yeah, we both got away with reasonably good results from that course.
Did they just have a high tolerance for bad grammar and shit? bizarre.
Awful. Anyway, so yeah, I could break this film down for hours and hours and hours, but I think if we'll stick to trying to talk more generally about it. I still adore this movie. I think all this time on, it's still one of my favorite sort of like, what's what I'm looking for? These sort of like more thoughtful, artful films. I think it's deeply entertaining on an intellectual level that like a lot of films aren't, and I still love it for that deeply. I think it manages to be intellectual without being pretentious, in my opinion, and I think it's one of the rare films that's like that is also like benefits from repeat viewings. And there are plenty of other movies we've watched that I loved on this podcast that I will be like, I loved that, I will never watch that again. I have no need to watch that again. Whereas with this one, I do feel like now I've sort of ripped the Band-Aid off and, you know, sort of found out that I still love this movie. I think now it'll probably return to regular-ish rotation. I don't know. You know, maybe not every year exactly, but like I could see myself watching this in like 2 years' time again, quite easily, quite happily. I could see myself watching it fucking tomorrow also. But yeah, I still love this film with all my heart. I still think it's everything. The music, oh my god! So I reread the novel this week. Chris, I say this week, literally like the last day or two. It's only like 22,000 words or something. It's very short. I read that, like, this is what a nerd I am, while having the movie soundtrack on my headphones. That's how much of a nerd I am for this movie.
I think that's probably a really fun way to engage with that, though. Like, I imagine that made it very atmospheric.
Yes.
Like, that would have been cool.
Yeah,
music's
so good.
Nerdy as an activity, but you know, amazing.
Yeah. So it's good stuff.
I had that. This is just me celebrating nerdiness, and before I tell this story, I just want to say I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the band that I'm about to mention. I don't mind them, but I'm not necessarily a huge fan. But the interest that the music industry and sort of touring and politics and promotion and all that sort of stuff interests me. And the other day I phoned up my friend who's also really into that stuff, and but not at all into this band. And I said, he picked up the phone and he said, "You're all right?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, Westlife have just announced a 25th anniversary tour. But what's weird is it's for like next year or this year, and it celebrates 25 years since they started touring. But in 2019, they did a 20th anniversary tour where they went off of the release of the first album. And to me, it feels a little bit wrong that they've sort of changed the definition of what the anniversary is. And it feels like it's, you know, a decision designed around nostalgia and the ability to sell the tour. And my mate went, "Wow, you said that to me because I'm literally the only fucking person in your life that will tolerate you saying something like that to me, too, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yes." But now I've forced everyone else to hear my thoughts on it in a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward that they've picked and choose what they're going off the years of, because presumably they just couldn't get the tour together in time for 2024, which would have been the equivalent. Yeah. Because obviously it was 2019 for 20 years, so the equivalent would have been 2024 for 25 years. But obviously they couldn't pull it together in time for that, so they've picked another moment to do the anniversary of. I think that's fine.
I know what happens. I'm not sure how I feel about it, Dan.
How do you feel about Glastonbury having like 40 blank spots on their schedule this year?
I don't love that. It's difficult, isn't it? Because as a festival goer, it's probably quite fun and intriguing. It's a festival trend I'm not huge on for some reason, but I can't really pinpoint why. I think it's because it's too different. I'm not coming at it from that point of view. If I'm there and there's a chance a band I love might suddenly appear and I'll get to see them and I wasn't expecting to, then great. Well, hey. If I'm at home, you know, wondering what sets I'm going to try and check out and thinking about judging the lineup in the way I've just, you know, thinking about it in the way I've just thought about a fucking Westlife tour, then I struggle with it personally because I'm like, what, you can't really judge a lineup on that. Last year, do they get points for having a Foo Fighters secret set? Probably, it's a different thing to like the actual festival lineup. So yeah, and there is a lot of it at Glastonbury this year.
It's crazy. Sure. Everyone's talking about. So there's a big gap on the first day, right in the middle, like right before Alanis Morissette. There's like a TBA, which is just deliberately a TBA, which means it'll probably be announced at some point soonish. But the one that everyone's talking about is there's a fictional band doing the main stage, the pyramid stage, third from the end on Saturday, called Patchwork. And I believe one of the lady that like helps run this, I don't know if she's like the main person or not, she basically said that was one of the hardest sets to negotiate, and everyone's like, oh, so who's Patchwork then? It's a fictional band. There's no band called Patchwork. So everyone's very excited about that. I do like that is creating press for them. We shouldn't be talking about this on this podcast, but I do enjoy that. Maybe it'll be known who Patchwork are by the time this happens. They will, because because the festival itself happens in like a week from where we're recording this.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Well, there you go. You can Google who were Patchwork at Glastonbury. You can find out. If you look at the lineup, it was the third from the end on the Saturday between John Fogerty and Ray. So there you go.
There we go. Let us know.
Well,
comment below.
We'll already know. We'll already know. Anyway,
sure.
That's the sort of thing I know Chris is interested in because he's a big old nerd. No judgment.
Well, says the man reading the novella, listening to the soundtrack, which is how we got here.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to? Should we do the thing, Dan?
Do the thing, Chris.
Let's triv it up.
I'm gonna give you some trivia. You know, we do. Do we usually wrap it up? Like do a final thoughts before we overall thoughts before we do triv? That felt sudden.
I don't think I've said the words I'd recommend. But I absolutely would. I would definitely recommend people watch this film. Where I think more people should see this film. I think there should be more discussion on this film. I think that you used the word intellectualized earlier, and I think the reality is there should be more back and forth discussion on this movie. It is a think piece. It makes you think. It's inherently leads to discussion, and I think it's a massive shame that discussion around this film isn't happening. And even its huge fans, I'm sure, would love to pick apart, and as we've sort of done today, you've had an opportunity to go, yeah, but no, if you think about it like this, and win me round on certain things, and highlight the beauty of the film. And I think it's a shame more people aren't watching it, and that's not happening.
Yeah, I agree. I think
coffee shops around the world. I don't know where, but you know what I mean.
Places where you can get coffee and pie. Oh my, that's a little reference to the movie. Another one of the weird, impenetrable, but then you find out later what he's talking about moments. That's another microcosm of what this movie does. In the middle of a sentence, someone's asking about something, and they're just like coffee and pie, and he goes, coffee and pie? Oh my! And you're like, what the fuck are they talking about? And then you realise that they were talking about a location. There's like a coffee and pie place that has that in the window, and that's how we knew where to go. And it's like, oh, you were giving him instructions. But when you first hear it, you're like, what the fuck are they talking about? Anyway, so for final thoughts from me, I look, it remains a masterpiece. For me, it's a genius script performed by brilliant actors and filmed by a really, really great team of cinematographers and the director. And they're all the choices come together to make this really, really special, very unique. And we talked about this a lot. Films that are unique. So many movies and TV shows we watch and review feel like something else. Even when they're good, you go, oh, it's kind of a pastiche of this and this, but that's good. It's really I enjoyed it. It's so rare something is utterly unique, so unique that you're like I don't think anything else exists quite like this. And yeah, it's a pastiche of another genre, but it's the way that it's infused with what it's doing feels like something completely new that it's created, and it's never been repeated, and it probably won't be, because who the hell would risk doing this again for any reason. But it is. I love this movie. I think the cast are amazing. The visuals are great. The script is really strong. The music is beautiful. I'm a big old fan. So with that in mind, Chris, shall we move into the triv?
Let's do it.
It will surprise you not, Chris, to know that Rian Johnson grew up watching detective films, film noir particularly. And for this one, he kind of actually had a much more specific inspiration. Sort of hard-boiled detective novels from like the late 20s, early 30s by Dashiell Hammett, such as Red Harvest, The Maltese Falcon, and The Glass Key. But he didn't want to imitate what came before. He wanted to do something new with it, like just what we talked about, that uniqueness. So he spoke to the AV Club about the decision to set the film in a high school in 2000. He spoke to them about this in 2006. The movie is not set in 2006. I feel like it's very clear the movie is sort of set mid-90s, maybe earlier, like early 90s, because cell phones aren't really like a thing. I don't know when the movie is exactly set, but it's like, I feel like when this movie came out in 2005, most kids had a cell phone in school. Whereas this movie seems to be set,
I would say so, yeah.
5-10 years earlier than that, where that's not the case. But yeah, speaking to the AV Club in 2006, Rian Johnson said, "At first, it was just a decision to put it in a different setting to try and capture some of that unexpectedness I experienced reading the books. I think at this point, we're also familiar with the visual cues of film noir, so I felt putting it in a different setting visually might help us not lean on our preconceptions of the genre too much. But then I started working on it, and one of the real joys was in many ways, it ended up becoming very much about the experience of being a teenager for me." So a lot of people have interpreted this as meaning that it's autobiographical in some way, but he did an interview with The Telegraph, as I mentioned earlier, titled Drugsy Malone, and he did clarify, "Brendan isn't a me or a version of me, but I am using the heightened world of detective fiction to communicate a very impressionistic memory of high school." So it's sort of like supposed to evoke the feelings of going to high school without being necessarily about a specific high school experience, which I think he nailed, right?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely he did. Like, it feels very high school. And it feels absolutely that interpretation of, like you said, everything having so much weight when you're that age, and this film just like literally reflecting that is very much there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything feeling like it's like life or death when you're a teenager, but actually, it's just like you've had a squabble with a friend at high school, but actually, it's like it is your life, and like it is the when it goes wrong, it's the be all and end all, but it's not. You learn that when you get a bit older. But yeah, this film sort of doing a literal interpretation of that is very cool. I do love. We've talked about it, but I just it's in my notes here. That he wrote it in 1997, but approached it in an unusual way. I can't think of another movie certainly not one we've talked about where the script was first written as a novel with the intention of adapting it to a screenplay. Like, he knew he was going to make it a film, but he chose to write it as a novel first to sort of get the tone right and the stylistic stuff, which I just think is such an interesting experiment and choice. And it's one of the reasons I think the film feels so unique. Excuse me. We talked about that he took 6 years to get it produced. In the end, he got it made at $450,000 was the budget. To save money and to make this film work on such a budget, he actually shot in his hometown. They actually filmed at his actual high school. So this was a really sort of reminiscent of his high school experience. He said it was cathartic returning to the school for the movie. And in fact, in the meeting with Truman, Brendan says he refers to a teacher called Miss I can't pronounce that name, Kapriziak or something like that, and describes her as being tough but fair. That's an actual English teacher who was largely known for being tough but fair at the real high school where the movie was shot, and presumably someone, someone Rian Johnson potentially was taught by as well, which is very interesting.
You gotta question slightly, like, did the school read the script before allowing it to be filmed there?
Yeah, I guess so. The school doesn't come off too bad, I don't think, in the script. No, they're trying their best to like crack down on what's going on.
Well, yeah, I suppose, and I suppose there's nothing to indicate that the. Well, no, we know there's at least. I mean, yeah, a big brick of heroin's found on the school premises at the end of the movie, Dan.
That's true, but it's caught because of a diligent student and the hard work of an assistant vice principal.
Yeah, who the vice principal allows to get beaten to fucking near death throughout the movie. But yeah,
I do love that scene, and I tell you what I really love about that scene is when he's like, you got to keep the heat off me, and he's like, look, I can't help you if you get like fully caught. And he's just like, look, if I get caught, I'm fucked anyway. I also like that point in the movie when like Brain rings him and is like, hey, they came to class looking for you. You can't come back here. They probably ran your mum too, so like get out of the house. Like the idea that like to continue doing what he's doing, he has to like sort of separate. He has to get away from the adults because they've started to figure out what's going on, and they will of course stop it.
Yeah, but then seemingly just his solution to that is just to sneak back into the house a little bit later.
Yeah.
Like the notion, like when I'm a teenager at school, like if the phone goes at 5 a.m, the notion that I could just answer it quickly and get away with that and not have anyone notice is mad.
That's fair. That is fair. So yeah, I like that element of it. So yeah, the school layout is actually very similar. So the drain tunnel is located just down the street from the football field, and that goes under a freeway by the Pico exit off ramp. So that's like a real, like even the layout as in the script. Because I remember when I first watched the movie, when he's at the football field, and I know that meeting is happening at the drain soon. I'm like, how's he going to get to the drain so quick? And then like he just starts walking. And, Dode's going that way too. And I'm like, oh, it must just be like really near the field. And yeah, it is. And it really is. The layout matches the actual layout as well. They just used the real town to give it sort of like unauthenticity, which works really well, in my opinion. So the foot chase was the first scene shot at the school. Imagine that being your first day on that film. A lot of running. It feels exhausting. I remember I saw a clip recently of Rowan Atkinson describing Mr. Bean's holiday and saying that like he did a scene where there's a joke where he cycles past. He's like doing like a leisurely stroll on a big sort of like decorative bike, and then he goes past people who are like cycling quicker. Like he goes past them quicker. And that to do that, he had to cycle incredibly fast while performing, while they cycled incredibly slow to create that effect. And he said it was the most exhausting day of his career, and he'd never do it again. I can't imagine running at that pace that they go in this movie all day would have done while they shot and shot and shot. That would have killed me. Anyway,
no, that couldn't have been fun.
No. So there is really the signs that where it's like Sacramento and Camino del Rio, like those, that junction does exist. It's a real place in the San Clemente suburbia, but the phone booth itself is a prop and is not there. And if you go, would not be there. He did have difficulty finding a mansion to film the party scene. Apparently, one day left until he needed to find a location. A former telecom executive and eccentric millionaire allowed them to shoot in his place right before it went into construction. It was like about to be under construction, so he was like, "Yeah, fuck it, you can't hurt the place. I'm about to reconstruct it anyway." So they got in very luckily to film the party scene there. So there you go. The smoke that comes out of the back of Dode's head when he's shot is actually not intentional. The compressed air from the device used to shoot the blood then let out some steam in the cold air. They left it, though, because they thought it looked cool. Also, the two birds flying...
It did look cool.
It really did. It's a good shot. The two birds flying out of the tunnel also didn't happen. They refused to fly when the gun went off, which was the plan. So they actually had to do a sort of split screen of sorts where they bisected the image along through the middle, where the top half of the image is from later on, and it's overlaid on the earlier part of the image, which is the bottom half, which is what the characters are in. That's how they got the birds to line up with the shot. It's actually it's a pretty seamless effect, so good work. Ryan Johnson cited spaghetti westerns and Cowboy Bebop as an influence on his visualization of the movie. And in fact, Brendan's hair, personality, and even walk are partially inspired by Spike, the lead character of Cowboy Bebop. Now, I did a little bit of research before I watched it this time. I don't normally do that because I was just worried about time because I was busy yesterday and I was just trying to figure out when I was going to see, when I was going to do it all. And I'd read that before watching it. Knowing that, as a Cowboy Bebop fan, and then watching the movie is insane. He is extremely like Spike. Like, it's crazy. The way he'll walk into a scene, it's his posture, the way he's like, while people are talking. He does that several times in the movie, which is very unlike a main character. Usually a main character always has something to say, and sometimes he just lets people talk themselves into a hole. That is all extremely Cowboy Bebop. That is extremely Spike. So very well done. That's a great reference. Man, Chris, I thought of a joke to do at the beginning of this podcast and then didn't get a chance to do it because we got distracted. I was going to say, Brick, the story of a young boy inflicted with a medical condition that means he can't remove his hands from his pockets, searching for a cure.
That's very good.
That's a shame I didn't think to say that, isn't it? That just reminded me because I was talking about, the way he has his hands in his pocket is very like Spike. Anyway, the music is composed by Ryan Johnson's cousin Nathan Johnson, with additional support music from the Cinematic Underground. The score is sort of deliberately reminiscent, as you pointed out, noir films, features sort of traditional instruments such as pianos and trumpets and violins, but it does also contain some unique stuff. And I'm sure you heard all of these noises, Chris. Instruments and objects such as the winophone, the metallophone, the tack pianos, filing cabinets, kitchen utensils, and it was all recorded on just a MacBook Pro. Not even MacBook Pro, Apple PowerBook.
Oh, fair play. Wow, fair play.
And even funnier, Nathan Johnson was actually in England during most of the movie's production process. So the score was composed almost entirely over Apple's iChat, with Ryan Johnson playing clips of the movie to Nathan, and then he would score them. And then they mixed the soundtrack together in New York at a later point. Considering the distance and all of the weirdness of that, like, the score is one of the best things about the movie.
The score's phenomenal. Yeah, absolutely.
This movie often gets criticism for its lack of actual classroom scenes. Considering it's a movie set at a high school, we never once see the characters in a classroom.
No, it would fall the fuck apart if it's too. It would break the illusion too much if we actually saw inside classrooms.
I agree. And originally there was a scene where. The scene where he goes through her book and finds the symbol on the paper because he nicked her little pocket diary or whatever. Him opening it up and looking through it was supposed to happen during a class while we could faintly hear a teacher talking in the background, but we were focused in on him at a desk opening it and looking at the clues. I don't know how that would have played out. It's actually that scene plays out exactly that way in the novella. I don't know how it would have looked visually. I guess if we could have framed it so it looked like a detective going back to his desk, somehow, we might have been able to get away with that. But I think you're right. I think probably it's a good thing that the movie avoids actual classrooms.
Yeah, personally, I think so.
Apparently, the horn signal that Brendan instructs Laura to give him the long, short as an alert is the same as the doorbell signal that Sam Spade tells Bridget O'Shaughnessy in the Maltese Falcon. So it's obviously just a reference to the Maltese Falcon. Another reference to the Maltese Falcon is Brendan's line to Laura, "Now you are dangerous," which is taken also from that movie. That's a great line. Good line, excellently used. God, so the dialogue in this movie is so good. I could literally, if we could do a whole podcast where I just pulled up the script and just picked out my favorite lines. I'm not going to do that, but like, there's so much good dialogue.
Yeah, and I think, some podcast ideas don't need to involve me. So,
So funny. What's funny about this movie? You may have noticed I didn't do a collection of like my final thought notes, because I really struggled to like make notes while this movie was on. I was so engrossed, like I genuinely made almost no notes.
Yeah, it's very captivating for sure. It definitely pulls you in.
For sure. Director Ryan Johnson was asked by a critic. Oh, this is an interesting one. I thought this was interesting. So basically, the film did the usual thing that films like this do, because it was independently financed. There was no distributor. So the reason it ends up in a cinema in the UK for young Dan to see it is because at a certain point, someone picked it up for distribution, and that's Focus Features, whose logo is at the beginning of the movie. But how that happens is he plays it at festivals. So the movie does the festival circuit for probably the whole year, and then Focus say we'll release it, give it a wider release, and pay a certain amount of money for that privilege, and then probably took a huge amount of the movie's takings. But because it was seen at the film festivals and then had a slight re-edit before then going out through Focus, Ryan Johnson was asked about the 2 days previous title card because the film premiered without one. So, for those who don't remember or have not yet seen the film, the movie starts with our character looking at the body, and then we go back 2 days to find out how we got to dead girlfriend. And Ryan Johnson has sort of said in defense of it, and I thought this is really interesting. His initial instinct was to not use the 2 days previous and let the storytelling, let the filmmaking tell us that we've gone back in time. But the problem is, if you don't have 2 days previous, the amount of time we've gone back could be any, and there's no urgency to that because we don't know that the events we've just seen are imminent. We could be going back 2 days, we could be going back 2 months, we could be going back 2 years. So his logic
that makes sense.
When Emily is worried she's in trouble and then goes to walk away, we know that the chances are the next time he sees her, she's dead. And if it just cut back, we wouldn't necessarily know that with the same level of certainty, which is why he stuck with it. Although apparently,
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree. He was also asked why he changed the font of the main title, which was in cursive originally, and he's like, I have no idea. I can't remember why we changed it, but the cursive one was better. He doesn't know why he changed it. So yeah, he thought that. I thought that was very interesting. Like, it goes to show you the amount of thought that went into every little detail of this movie, because I would have never imagined a conversation happening about whether you have 2 days previous or not. Like, that's such a small detail. Like, yeah, okay, keep it, don't keep it, whatever. But like, yeah, he clearly put a lot of thought into every tiny little detail of this movie. So it's unknown how much Focus Pictures paid for the distribution rights to this movie. So the following calculation is missing a very important figure. But if the budget is $450,000, it had a limited release in just 8 markets. It grossed $3.9 million in the end, which is a very small number in terms of the films we've talked about in this podcast. But for a movie that cost $500,000, a $4 million turnout is pretty good. But we do not know how much Focus invested in this movie. Did they double that? Did they add? Did they pay? Because they presumably they paid the investors had to get their money back. So did Focus Features pay at the very least $450,000 to get it and then market it? So we're looking at a $1.5 million spend. Unclear, absolutely unclear. Presumably the investors would have wanted to see some profit too. So we don't know. Is the answer. But yeah, whatever deal was struck, the movie was released. I think it had considering what it is and the limited nature of its release, I think it did a pretty good job. I think $4 million out of that is pretty good. And obviously the movie then had a Donnie Darko like sort of not quite Donnie Darko like, but had quite a success on home video as well.
Yeah, it definitely grew, even if not financially, its status for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So we are at everyone's favorite part of the podcast, Chris. It's time for Cars Exist. It gets better and better. So Cars Exist is where I just name the cars that are in the movie for reasons of, I don't know, people put the information in the IMDb trivia, and I found it funny. So Laura's car is a 1961 Ford Thunderbird, of course. Tug's car is a 1971 Mustang, Ford Mustang. Pin's people carrier that he takes is blatantly his mum's car and has a lamp in it, which is one of my favourite jokes in the whole movie, by the way. Just cracks me up every time. That there's just a lamp in the back of this car, like a really decorative one. But that is a 1985 Chevrolet Astro. So yeah. God, is that everything? Oh, very quickly, one other joke I forgot to mention that I really like. I like it when Brain says he's heard of the Pin. He's supposed to be old, like 26 or something. It's a great joke. It's a good joke.
That's good. That's a very good
one of my
joke.
favourite lines in the whole movie. The Pin, yeah, he's supposed to be old, like 26 or something. Fuck. Anyway, right. I guess for the movie that is old. Oh yeah, credit for this movie, by the way.
It absolutely works in context of the movie. That's a great joke.
Yeah. Also, credit to the movie for casting actual young people. I know Joseph Gordon-Levitt was slightly older than this character, but like most of these actors are in the range of the age of what they're going for. They're only slightly older, so this isn't a Grease situation where it's like 30-odd-year-olds playing high schoolers, and I appreciate that. So 10 points again to Ryan Johnson. So there you go. That's Brick. It was a big one for me that we've just ticked off. So where are we at, Chris, for next week? What are we thinking? You get the choice. Where are we going?
Yeah, I've just been mulling that, and do you want to know something like depressing? So obviously there was this slight accidental theme to the podcast this year, which was a lot of the movies also have actors from The West Wing in, and it was stumped before Brick. It was stumped by Johnny English, which I trawled through everyone involved in Johnny English and couldn't find someone. Do you want to know something depressing, Dan? I've just been casually clicking on Google people's faces that were in The West Wing and seeing if I get inspiration for a movie choice. Richard Schiff, who was obviously in Jurassic Park and The West Wing, he was fucking in Johnny English too. I don't necessarily want to pick it, but like, how frustrating is that?
That is unfortunate. That is very unfortunate.
He was in the sequel. Oh, that's so depressing.
And did you thoroughly go through the cast list of Brick?
I started when you chose it, or when I saw it was the choice for this week last time, but not in as much detail because it was already broken by Johnny English at that point.
That's fair. Just
Richard Cliff was in Tower Heist, which is a movie I have threatened to do on multiple occasions. As was Alan Alda, who was also in The West Wing.
Yeah.
I haven't got a choice, which means I need to suddenly think of a choice. So
I had a feeling we were going into this podcast with you having a clear answer. I'm surprised that you're that surprises me that you haven't got a ready to go answer.
I did see a 2-minute. I saw a 2-minute montage of a film the other day, and thought, I saw that film in a really weird scenario and didn't enjoy it. But I think I just wasn't paying attention and didn't get it. And maybe we should do that at some point on Rewind Reviews. But I'm always picking films I've not even seen myself. So it's my last choice of the series. I think or have I got one more?
It's a good question. It's a great question. I don't know the top of my head. I will find out. I'll put it.
That's all right. I can have it.
I was going to say you can.
Yeah, it's my last choice, but I haven't got another one, and it feels oddly timely because a trailer was released for another. Fuck it. Okay, fine. We're doing Aeroplane.
Interesting. Okay, there were a couple of things that could be. It was either going to be Airplane, it was going to be Naked Gun, or it was going to be Spaceballs. I had a feeling you were about to pick one of those three movies.
So I thought about Naked Gun, actually, because have you seen the Liam Neeson Naked Gun trailer?
I have. It's from the guys... I tell you what makes me interested in that is that it's from the guys from Lonely Island, and they made that Pop Star Never Stop Stopping movie, which is an amazing film. So, like, was his name Akiva or something? So I am kind of curious if that movie maybe that movie's going to be good. The trailer's okay.
Well,
it's a bit bizarre.
I thought the trailer was okay, but I didn't know whether... Because it just looked so quick fire in terms of the jokes, but I was like, I hope these are jokes in the spirit of the original, as opposed to repeating the jokes of the original. And I think it's the first one, but I haven't seen the original. But I suppose. Yes, and I nearly toyed with picking that because of that trailer.
Yeah, no, Airplane's a classic. I love Airplane. It's a great joke.
The scenario in which I watched Aeroplane is so ridiculous that I think that it should be the choice just for that story alone.
I'm excited, man. This is good stuff. I'm double checking the cast, by the way, for the West Wing, and I've not found any West Wingers yet. I'm nearly there. I've nearly gotten through everyone.
Oh, in Brick? No, I think I was pretty thorough, but I'd love it if there was someone.
Well, let's give me 2 seconds, and I'll do the last one or two, and then we'll see if it's not looking good, if I'm being honest with you. But maybe the last one or two is where you find that obscure, like, they had a small bit part. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. Look, fundamentally, it's sort of a similar 2005. So The West Wing was airing or just finishing in that time frame, I think. Yeah.
This guy has like
That's
four.
possible.
This guy has 4 credits, so it's not him.
Yeah, that's the problem with Brick. A lot of them haven't been in much.
Yeah, I'm nearly at the end. It's not looking good. I've got a couple names left to check, Chris.
I toyed while I was trying to think of a choice. I toyed with just picking Chaos and Titanic, but
Oh God, we will have to cover that at some point, but fuck me, hopefully not soon.
We'll get to Titanic. The move on Titanic is to already have scheduled in the next podcast and then pick it and just hear you go, oh, fuck off. Like, we're recording in 2 days and now I've got to watch and do the trim for Titanic.
No, don't do that to me. You'll make me hate the movie. I'm already very dubious that I'll enjoy the Titanic on a rewatch. I'm not sure that movie holds up. But
oh no, I've watched it in the cinema as a script. It is deeply flawed.
Yeah. Oh, Chris, you're gonna be sad.
Opinion.
There is nothing.
It would be worse, I think, at this point if you found someone, because then
wait.
I'd be like, oh shit.
The very last name. Nope, nothing. Yeah. No, there is no link directly between Brick and the West Wing.
Which is a shame. I'm sure there's a 6 Degrees link, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's always a 6 Degrees link. Always.
I
mean, Joseph Gordon-Levitt would give you that alone, wouldn't he? He's been in a bunch of stuff with lots of people. You could easily.
Should we see if we can do it quickly? Hold on. I mean, we don't. Probably not. It's probably not entertaining podcasting, is it? But let's just have a look at his list. I'm cheating. I'm looking at a list. Knives Out would probably be a route. Although I can't remember him in Knives Out, but I looked during this podcast at his Wikipedia, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt has had uncredited cameos in like every Rian Johnson movie.
Yeah, he has. He's just a voice in the first Knives Out at the beginning of the movie. He's not like in it, if that makes sense.
Okay. Right, well, we know we can get to the West Wing from Jurassic Park, so it's got to be fairly easy to get from Joseph Gordon-Levitt to a Jurassic Park movie, surely.
Yeah, that might be it. Let me think. Just trying to think of the best way in.
Is it worth us wrapping the podcast, doing a beep, and doing an extra bit so you could just cleanly cut us looking?
No, we'd leave this in. Who's it hurting?
Okay, so what? So have we got any links between Seth Rogen and Jurassic Park?
No, I think I've done it.
Crap.
I think Rob Lowe was in the interview with Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Was it? Hold on.
So I think it's just one link. Yeah, Rob Lowe and Joseph Gordon-Levitt were both in the interview, and that movie.
There you go.
That links them directly.
Boom. Done. Take us home, Dan.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. Well, you take us home on this one, but thanks everyone for listening. I do.
Sorry. You tend to do the where they can find us.
Yeah, right. Well, mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk with thoughts on the movie Brick. Maybe you also just thought it was fine. Okay. No, thoughts on the film Brick, obviously. Mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk. You can catch us on Patreon if you want to hear us discussing Airplane right now. Patreon.com/nothingbutstatic will give you access to that episode a week early. The same when we come back for Analysing Avatar. God knows what's going to happen with Steven Universe / Lars of the Stars, but question mark here. That's an upcoming thing that we now need to worry about on our schedule. But yeah, thanks everyone very much. You can support us in all the usual ways, like liking, subscribing, commenting on any of the various platforms. We're on youtube.com/nothingbutstatic, UK, or like you just find us on whatever podcast app you use. Yeah, like, subscribe, review, tell a friend, all that jazz. We appreciate everything that you guys do. We appreciate you just listening. That's also good. But otherwise, I'm going to hand over to Chris, who ends this thing.
My name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.